Hi guys, welcome back to yet another episode. And guys, on this episode today, it is going to be very interesting. As you know, I am going for a complete collection for the PS2, and I always wondered what PS2 games that were originally planned for release but due to uncertain circumstances never saw the light of day. And whilst I was doing my research, I was thinking some of these games should have got released and would have been successful, but again, never saw the light of day. Let's discuss on this episode right now. Stay tuned. Right guys, so let's discuss the first cancelled game of this video, and that is Lamborghini, developed or was developed by Rage Software. And whilst looking into this game, I was thinking this game should have got released. It is a tremendous shame. Just look at the graphics, look at the gameplay. It looks like a solid racer, you know, and with the Lamborghini license, it would have been an amazing game. What happened? What went wrong? Let's just say Rage Software filed for bankruptcy before the game's release, and once they did that, the game unfortunately got cancelled. However, nothing was lost, and the game's assets was recycled for the Juiced series. That's right, if you remember Juice for the PS2, the developers that created Lamborghini then went on to develop the Juice series. So it's good to know how it would look like, because the way that Juice plays, I think Lamborghini would have played similar to the Juice franchise. Juice franchise is really underrated, you know, and I think it should have got a remake for modern gamers on the PS5. But back to Lamborghini, there is news, let me tell you. So originally, the best way to play Juiced was the demo that was released for the Xbox all the way back in 2003. And until then, the demo was the only way to play it. However, nearly 2 decades later, a website called archive.org got the full game dumped on its website, and now you can play the full game in its entirety on your PC. And I'm definitely going to download it and give it a go and see what it will look like. And if I look at the trailer, I think it would have been an amazing game. And guys, what do you think? Would have Lamborghini succeeded in that era? And think about it, racing games in that era was very tough to be number one. I think it would have done well, but it would not have competed with more established franchises such as Need for Speed, Burnout and Gran Turismo. If you disagree with that, leave it in the comments below. So on to the next unfortunate cancelled game. So let's talk about the next cancelled game, and this game is a fighting game developed by Capcom. And when it comes to fighting games, royalty is Capcom. And back in 2003, they wanted to release a game called Capcom Fighting All-Stars, a 3D fighter. What happened? Now, at the time, before the game's impending release, before it was cancelled, was that SNK was having bankruptcy problems, and this caused further delay in the game's development. However, the game was complete and it reached the testing stage, and in the testing stage it got negative feedback, and rather working on the game and to make it better and improve it, they decided to cancel the entire game's release. And I've got to feel sorry for the developers who worked hard to create a 3D fighter until it did not get its release. And guys, I'm looking at the gameplay, it looks like a decent 3D fighter. People are gonna complain because Ryu does look like Akira Yuki which I understand, it is what it is, similar characters. And yeah, it looked and runs well, and it looked like a decent fighter, you know. And Capcom, now this baffles me the most. They cancelled this game and released a worse game called Capcom Fighting Evolution or Fighting Jam if you're in the EU, which was a terrible fighter, one of the worst fighting games ever released by Capcom. And I'm thinking, how bad was All Stars compared to Fighting Jam? If you're gonna cancel a game and release this trash, you might as well release both. That's my personal opinion. And for me, I'm a huge fan of 3D fighters. I love the Virtua Fighter series, the Dead or Alive series, the Tekken series, and I think Street Fighter would have done decent at the time, because around 2003, Tekken 4 was not setting the world light. Virtua Fighter was struggling a bit, and people like me were still playing Tekken Tag Tournament, which was released 3 years previously. And I think Capcom Fighting All Stars would have done well, despite its flawed gameplay. I think it would have sold well, and we might have got, you know, a series out of it. But unfortunately, Capcom pulled the plug, and unfortunately, we never got to see the game. But if you want to see how the game plays, you can see videos of it on YouTube and other online providers. And for me, it's just a shame. It's just a shame that we never got this fighting game. And guys, what do you think? Capcom Fighting All Stars, would it have done well back in 2003? And would it have been a better alternative to the terrible Fighting Jam? I'll leave it up to you guys in the comments below. So on to the next cancelled game. Alright guys, so on to the next game that was cancelled for the PS2, and that is Ice 9, which was only released for the Game Boy Advance, and the PS2 version was cancelled. So what happened? Now, Ice 9 was meant to be a movie-based tie-in game with a movie called The Recruit. However, The Recruit was a commercial failure in the box office. It was so bad, in fact, that they had to change the game's name from The Recruit to Ice 9. And the only issue with the game is that it has the same story as the movie, but with a different name. So they did not want to associate themselves with the movie, so it does not have effect on the sales. And the PS2 version was still going well in development. However, it was cancelled midway. And whilst looking at the gameplay online, I've got to say it does look a bit shady, it does look a bit unfinished, unpolished, which is understandable because it was in development at the time. And again, with first person shooters, it was very tough genre to get into. You're talking about Halo and Co in the market at the time. So I think the competition for Ice 9 would have phased it out of the market, and again the developers made the sensible decision to cancel the game before it gets any worse. So guys, Ice 9, have you heard about this game? Would it have done well in the market at the time? I don't think so. If the movie flopped, Ice 9 would have followed suit. That's my personal opinion. So guys, have you even heard of Ice 9? Leave in the comments below. So guys, on to the next cancelled game for the PS2. Right guys, so on to the final game of this video that got cancelled, and it's a wrestling game. And as you know, I'm a huge fan of professional wrestling, and that game in question was WCW Mayhem 2. It was meant to be released in 2001, developed by Aki Corporation, which made the outstanding No Mercy games and WWF WrestleMania 2000. What happened? In 2001, it was end of an era. The Monday Night Wars came to conclusion. Vince McMahon bought WCW. At the time, I could not believe what I was seeing. I can remember like it was yesterday, nearly 25 years ago, March 26th, 2001, they did a dual telecast, and Vince McMahon announced that he bought WCW from Ted Turner. And for me, WCW was an amazing show. It had its tragic end. The last 2 years of WCW was terrible, but from 1995 till 98, it was the pinnacle of professional wrestling. Look at the roster, man. Scott Steiner, Hulk Hogan, Sting, Buff Bagwell, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Booker T, Jeff Jarrett. The true greats of professional wrestling. And when it came to WCW games, they had some amazing games, you know. They had the famous NWO vs. the World, which was a very outstanding wrestling game. And the PS1 games were terrible, gotta keep it real. And once they planned to enter the new generation for the PS2, I thought, you know what, it was gonna be amazing. But it got cancelled due to the merger. Now, what happened to WCW Mayhem then? So it was early in development, and after it got cancelled, they just repurposed it and made the very good wrestling game and very underrated wrestling game in Def Jam Vendetta. If you remember, a wrestling game for rappers, which I thought at that time was dumb, but when I played it, I thought, you know what? It's a very polished wrestling game, you know. It has a very huge element of in-depth wrestling moves, which I was shocked at the time for a wrestling game. And then I found out years later it was meant to be WCW Mayhem 2. It is what it is. At least we got the Def Jam out of it. And guys, what was your memories of WCW? I think in 2001 it ended professional wrestling in the mainstream as a whole. After WrestleMania 17, that was peak wrestling. That was it. Wrestling will never reach those heights ever again. And 2001 was the last time that I can say that wrestling was popular. And then I know we got the Ruthless Aggression era, I know we got the PG era, and now with the Netflix era. But the magic from that time, from 95 to 2001, I don't see wrestling reaching those heights again. If you disagree, leave it in the comments below. So guys, WCW Mayhem 2, were you waiting for that game to come out? Were you disappointed when Vince McMahon bought WCW? Leave it in the comments below. So guys, next week I'm gonna show you the next 5 games I'm gonna pick up for my PS2 collection. Stay tuned for that. Anyways guys, don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.